Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. We are so glad that you are all here. We're doing something a little different today, aren't we? We have our speaker, Joy, first coming to us virtually, and we'll get her introduced to you shortly. But I want to thank each and every one of you for making it for November's second Tuesday with Fellowship of Professional Women. So I want to pray over our lunch, but just to introduce myself, I am Andrea Salas, President of Fellowship of Professional Women. And we have our board members here. If you're here in part of our board, you can wave your hand. Marilyn, Cynthia, you guys, and many of our advisory board members as well. We've got Charlene as well as Donna. So we welcome you all. We're so glad that you're here with us today. Even though we are still navigating the unusual, we are still wanting to rejoice in the Lord and meet and be in fellowship with one another. So we started off this luncheon with a little praise and worship. Did that do something for your spirit? It did it for mine. It did it for mine. And so we are so pleased to be able to have that thing to do so. But I want to go ahead and take us to in prayer so that we can enjoy our lunchtime together. And for those of us who are meeting via Zoom, hey everybody, see that? So we got a camera here, we've got a camera up front, we've got Sarah, we've got Joy online, Heather, we've got Sheila online, and we're just so glad that you are joining us. And for those of you who are also going to be joining us via Facebook, we welcome you as well. But let's go ahead and take a moment for prayer, and we will reconvene at 12:25 for a word from Joy. Father God, we just thank you for Second Tuesdays. We thank you for Fellowship of Professional Women. We thank you that we come to you unashamed in such a time as this, that we lift you up in community, Father God. We thank you for the staff here in Park Cities who has not missed a beat in serving us and others well. Father God, we just thank you for this time together. We thank you for having Joy with us, bringing us a word of joy today. And Father God, we thank you for the food that we're about to receive, that it may be nourishing to our bodies. For those that are still traveling on their way here, that you continue to cover them in grace. And for those who are joining us online, Father God, you know their needs, and we just lift them up to you. In Jesus' name, amen. So Fellowship of Professional Women is a non-denominational group of women that we have the opportunity to aspire and acknowledge the faith in Jesus Christ in the marketplace. And so we come together every second Tuesday to do that. So if this is your first time here, please raise your hand. We've got Myrna as well as Susan here that would love to acknowledge you with a gift. Do we have any first-time visitors today? That's all right. Welcome, welcome. If you're first time online, wave your hand. Hey, Heather. You don't see Heather. Everybody wave to Heather. Yay. Welcome. We'll give you a special gift as soon as we can, Heather. But we do know that we take this 90-minute spiritual vacation where we can gather together for fellowship, support, prayer, and inspiration from God. And we leave encouraged and full of good food and good thoughts. And our scripture here at Fellowship of Professional Women is, let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another and all the more as you see the day approaching. So you guys enjoy your lunch, and we will reconvene at 12:25. We have tabletop at this time. And for those of you who are online, I believe Sheila will be helping facilitate that time with you guys. We'll see you back at 12:25.
Hi, everybody. This is Sheila Miller talking, and this is a time that we have to introduce ourselves, tell us how you found out about FPW, and anything that you may be doing for FPW or in your Christian walk that is of interest to everyone. I'll start. I'm Sheila Miller. I'm a retired person after a very long career in the defense industry, and I'm enjoying my retirement very much. And in retirement, I'm doing some volunteer work with single moms who have drug and alcohol addiction problems. And I'm hoping for COVID to go away and that we'll be able to have a good Thanksgiving and a good Christmas, even if it's not just like it is every other year. So let's see. Heather, can you be next? If you'd unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
I was double muted. Well, my name is Heather Perry. I actually work with Sarah and Joy, and so that's how I've been introduced to this organization. So this is my first time to attend and be a part of this luncheon. So we're excited to see what it's about.
Well, we're excited that you're here. And if you work with Sarah, you've got to be a good person. I'm just meeting Joy first time today, but I've known Sarah a long time. She's the best. Okay, Danielle Shaw, unmute yourself, please, and tell us about you.
Sorry about that, y'all. I'm at work, so yeah, I'm at work. But okay, what am I supposed to be saying?
Well, if you're at work and you don't need to be talking, you can tell us. And
No, I'm okay right now. I was on a phone call, but I'm okay right now.
Okay. So tell us about yourself, a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you came to FPW.
Oh, well, my name is Danielle Shaw. I am a middle school instructional media. I work in it's a librarian, but not so much because it's 90% technology now. And I'm here today because of Joy. I received the email about joining her today to hear her speak. And I know Joy through the Widow's Journey.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. So I guess you're trying to tell me that the library changed a little bit since I was in school?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, Danielle.
Thank you.
The next person I see is Sarah Benavides.
My name is Sarah Benavides. I serve on the board of FPW, and I've been a board member for 3 years now, and I've been an attendee of FPW for around 5 years. I live in Salina, Texas, and I have 3 little ones from the ages, I have 5, 6, and 10. And so we are heavily involved in Cub Scouts, and I enjoy coming to FPW because it's like a spiritual vacation just at lunch.
It is something you can do just for you without children right there too. So
Right?
not that we don't love them, but we do need our time alone, don't we? Thank you, Sarah. Bridget Bell, unmute yourself, please.
Is that better?
Great.
Okay. I am a real estate agent, and I specialize in helping seniors who are downsizing and moving to senior communities. I came, I don't know if with some friends. I have about 4 or 5 friends that have been in FPW for a long time, and so they invited me to come for lunch, and I've been coming for a couple of years now.
Is there a firm that you work for that you'd like to give a plug for?
I work for Ebby Halliday. I'm in the Preston Center office there, right by the Park Cities Club, and been with them about 15 years.
Okay, good. And you're helping people downsize?
Yes.
Yes, good. A lot of cause for that as the baby boomers get older.
Yes, yes, for sure. And my average age client really is about 85.
Okay.
So they're downsizing to move into a senior community, independent living, and they've been in their house about 100 years and that sort of thing. So I help everybody, but that's really my niche.
Yeah. I'm getting a mental picture of that now. Nancy St. Jacobs, tell us about yourself.
Hi, Sheila. Hello, everyone. I am loving this moment. I'm like you guys. This is a time that I look forward to every month because it takes me away from the rat race of work. And I live alone, so it's fun to see other ladies and chat and hear a good word. And seeing that you are all of faith, I love that. And this is a time that I can actually share and know that people actually understand what I'm saying, as opposed to being in the workplace with people who are younger than my kids. So I have 2 adult children, and I'm the grandma of Atlas and Knox, and they are the joys of my life. Feel lucky that I'm not putting a picture up so you guys could see them, because that's usually what I do. And I work outside of home. However, since March, I've been working at home, and I kind of like it. I miss socializing, but being a survivor twice of cancer, I've been warned, take care of yourself, take precautions. So, and I'm older, over 60. Yeah, you don't want to expose yourself too much. So I'm very thankful for that. And I really love the speakers. I'm looking forward to hearing Joy. I read her bio and I was just overwhelmed. I thought, I want to hear her, because usually when we have someone coming with Sarah, they're always awesome, because we really had a wonderful time with Erin. I learned so much about her heart. And this is what I love about FPW. And as vice president, I look at Andrea, I look at Cynthia, and I think, could I ever do that? But I'll have Sarah with me, so I'm sure I can.
Oh, well, good luck to you. And Sarah is wonderful. You'll find out she's good at everything.
She is.
Not that I'm bragging on her or anything, but we do wish you well in that. And thank you for introducing yourself. Laura Hornbeck, would you unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about you, please?
Oh, hello. Hi. I was a little bit late coming on today, and so I've only attended one event that the fellowship had, and it's been gosh, about 1.5 years ago, I think. A friend of mine named Verna Melton recommended me to come with her one time, and so I did, and I had a really good time. And I saw a lady that I knew from 15 years ago, but I live pretty far away. I live up closer to Sherman than I do to Dallas, so
it's a long way, yeah.
It's quite a trip. And but when I saw I've been on your newsletter, and I was very inspired by the topic that you're going to talk about. I am not a widow. I'm happily married. Actually, my husband works at home, but also I feel like this is an important issue, financial security and so forth.
Oh, for sure. We all need to learn more about that, for sure.
Exactly. So that's why I wanted to attend in particular. There have been others that were very intriguing, but I made time for sure today.
Really, every speaker that FPW has is a wonderful speaker.
Yeah.
Each is unique, but we never ever have a speaker that you can't learn something from. They're all wonderful. So thank you, Laura.
Thank you for
Yeah, and I think that's everybody except Joy. So Joy, do you want to say a few words, even though I'm sure you'll be formally introduced in a couple of minutes? Tell us something
Thank you.
tell us about you.
What the bio doesn't tell, that's right. You may know so much about me by the end of this lunch that you'll wish I would just be quiet now. But I think maybe what I would like to share from my heart that we don't talk a lot about, that we won't talk a lot about today over lunch, is my nonprofit that I help support, which is the Widow's Journey. So I like to say that widows are both my vocation and my avocation. I found that in working with widows as clients, my heart was just so big around their needs that
there wasn't really a place for them to gather after they did their initial 8 weeks of grief support. And we have some fabulous grief support groups in our community. But I know that I left my own grief support saying, well, that was wonderful, but what's next? And I realized there wasn't a what's next in our community. And so back in 2011, I founded the Widow's Journey, and it's become the what's next in our community for widows beyond their grief. So if you know someone who is widowed, we would love to welcome them with open arms into our group that meets monthly. In fact, we're having our own Zoom meeting tonight. We do recognize that widows have low white blood cell count, like Nancy, who's discussing her own challenge with surviving cancer, and Sarah, of course, too. Our ladies are the same way. We have lower blood, our white blood cell count leaves us more open for disease once we're widowed. And so we're still meeting via Zoom tonight. We're going to talk about how to make special and simple dishes during the holidays for one, because a lot of these ladies are cooking for one. So that's a little bit about what's on my heart beyond what we're going to talk about today. Thank you, Sheila.
So I have a candidate for you, Joy. So I guess I should just, let's see, do I have your email here or contact information or something? But anyway, I'll get that to you later somehow through Sarah. Our friend Sarah, she does.
Sarah is great. It's also info at thewidowsjourney.org. So it's that .org instead of the .com for the nonprofit, but it's info at thewidowsjourney.org. And I would encourage you guys to go check out the website and send that to your friend too, Sheila. We have a good website that talks a little bit more about our group. And we are trying to hold some sort of social event during the month as well that could be socially distanced. So the calendar is in a private spot on the widowsjourney.org website.
Okay.
All candidates welcome. All that's required is that you've lost your spouse.
Yeah. Well, that's perfect. Yes. I know someone who's hurting very much right now and in grief counseling and or just finishing grief counseling and is wondering, well, what's next for me? So this will be a perfect fit. I'm glad you found your way to FPW, every one of you. I've probably been a member of FPW about 10 years, and I've been a sponsor maybe 7 or 8 years. I love that FPW puts so much emphasis on prayer, because I do think that is so important. And in our busy lives, sometimes we just don't take the time for that, that we should maybe. If you have a prayer request today and you turn it in on the chat line, we will get it to the board and they'll be praying for you as of this afternoon. So feel free to do that. It's a godly group of godly women, so committed to each other and to all of you, and so much with arms wide open, you know, waiting to welcome anyone into our group. You know, it's not strictly any particular denomination. We're just all God believing women of all denominations and all walks of life. So anybody have anything else to say before Andrea opens us in the meeting? Might say we should all put ourselves back on mute. So we'll except for Joy, but we should all put ourselves on mute. So we'll be there when the meeting starts and the phones won't ring and stuff like that interrupt us. It's been such a problem, challenge for all of us about trying to be together during COVID-19. And as you said, Joy, you're trying to put together some kind of a get together around the holidays. And I don't know how you're going to do that, but I personally am very, very thankful for Zoom. It's not as good as being together, but it's so much better than nothing. It's so much better than the phone. I enjoy seeing people's faces and their expressions and catching up on Zoom. Thank goodness we have that technology. And who would have ever thought it would be free? I mean, can't get any better than that. But, you know, like all of us, we're missing those hugs. And when I talk about my friend who's a recent widow, about 7 months now, I guess, you know, I've never been able to hug her in all of that time. And how do you comfort a grieving person without hugging them? I mean, it's just been so hard. So we all look forward to when COVID's behind us. We're very excited about the idea that the announcement yesterday that there might be a vaccine coming. How wonderful is that? And to get that this year would be fabulous. Of course, I know that getting it this year doesn't mean we'll all get it the next day. I don't know what priority they may have, but I would think that certainly all the people, the doctors, nurses, medical professional people would be way before me. But hey, there's hope out there. You know, there's hope for a vaccine for all of us. And we can get back to normal life maybe. Sarah, are you at the Park City Club?
I am. So someone needs to manage the Zoom and
Okay.
greet people as they come in too.
Okay, that's perfect. Can you tell if Andrea's about to call us together yet?
She said 12:25 since 12:23, so I'm gonna give her 2 more minutes and then I'm gonna look at it.
You're right, she did say that. Thank you.
I'm sure it will be shortly though. I hear them. Everybody's giggling and having a good old time.
Yeah. If you've never joined FPW at Park City Club, it's a beautiful, beautiful place with beautiful views of downtown Dallas. And I guess it has views east, south, and west. So you would love to go there. The next opportunity that we have to all be together there. Many of the brave ones are there today, but not me. But it's just beautiful, and the food is always very good. The service is very good, and you get to see the leaders of FPW, Andrea and others, you know, up close and personal. And you would really enjoy that experience. It's a beautiful place. Joy, you have a pretty smile.
I was appreciating that Sarah was showing us the view. Sarah, who's in the room that we're missing? Oh, we lost her. I hate not being able to see who we're fellowshipping with. I might get sick to my stomach though.
Yeah, it is dizzying. You can see that they're
thank you.
They're socially distancing very well.
They are.
So Sarah, about how many people do you have there today?
We have about 20 to 25.
Okay. So you can see how.
So not too many.
Yeah, you can see how COVID-19 has hurt our attendance. We often would have sometimes as many as 100,
Wow.
but many people I'm finding out are growing tired of Zoom. Not me, I tolerate it very well because it's so much better than not seeing people. But some in my other groups that I'm with, my book club and whatever, have grown very tired of Zoom and they just don't want to do it anymore, even if it means staying home. So I'm personally very thankful for Zoom, and I'm thankful for every lady that made it to FPW today, whether on Zoom or in person. I see Andrea's shoulder every now and then.
Sheila, do you think well, I'll ask you this, like your friends in book club that have gotten tired?
Yes.
Is it because they are still working? I know, like for me, if I'm on it all day and then my book club wants to meet at night, I'm always like, oh, I want to see these people, but it's another hour spent on Zoom, you know?
Hi there. Hi there.
I
Can you
hear
hear
it.
us?
Hello.
We're back. You guys can't see everyone, but we see you right here on our big screen. We have a screen here. We have you guys up. We see you waving, and we're so glad to have you. You guys, I hope you enjoyed your table talk time here live and online, and that you got to know each other a little bit more. I know many of us have known each other for a couple of years, and new friendships that have developed, but we just thank you that we have this time together. But I want to go ahead and give a few announcements before we bring on Joy. And one of them is to say happy birthday to Juanita Brown. Juanita is going to be moving to Florida, is that right? Uh-huh. When are you moving, Juanita? First of year. All right, 2 seconds. Y'all ready? One. Yes. Marilyn's birthday was this weekend, right? Happy birthday, Marilyn. So we're going to take this moment to just celebrate you while we are together. So just a quick 2 verses of happy birthday. You guys ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear me. What are you, Marilyn? Happy birthday to you. Thank you. And for those of you who may have missed, happy birthday. So again, we did have an opportunity to introduce and see if we had any first-time visitors. And for those of you who have joined us online, are any of you first-time visitors? Other than Heather, I see Heather Perry there. Well, welcome back, everyone. And so just a few announcements. We do have sponsorships that are available for joining Fellowship of Professional Women for the 2021, that's a tongue twister, 2021 season. And so if you haven't renewed, Marilyn is in the back, and she'll be happy to visit with you after our luncheon today, or feel free to visit and send an email. But we do have branch sponsorships that are available at $375. Vine sponsors is $600, and you get 3 additional guest luncheon tickets. And then you also get 2 tickets to our sponsors brunch. We also have our corporate sponsors, and as you see on our board here, we have Class Act Creative, Frost Bank, Methodist Charlton, and Methodist Hospital Surgical Center, who are part of our corporate sponsors. We also have a corporate patron sponsorship package, as well as our 25th anniversary patron package. So we are continually, every month, making certain that we let you know that we are celebrating 25 years of ministry. And we started our season off with our past, meaning where did we come from and how did this ministry start? And then in December, we'll be talking about where we are in the present. So stay tuned for that as we continue to celebrate 25 years of service in ministry. So I'd like to go ahead and bring up Sarah, and she is going to introduce our speaker. Or you can do it from there, Sarah. How about that? Would you like to do it from there?
I'll do it from here.
Okay, great. And she's going to introduce Joy Kirsch to you, and then the next voice you'll hear will be from Joy. Now, as my beloved friend and mentor Cynthia has said, if you have not finished your lunch, you can turn right around with your plate. I know they'll be bringing out dessert shortly, but I am so excited to hear what Joy has to say. It was a pleasure getting to know Joy recently, and we just thank you for bringing us her testimony. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you, Andrea. I had the pleasure of meeting Joy Kirsch when her firm, Kirsch & Associates, joined us at Merit Financial Advisors. Joining us at Merit allowed her to devote her time to helping widows and navigate the difficulties associated with this life-changing event. Her passion for widows was formed when she was widowed in 1993 at the age of 30. She went from being with the man of her dreams to feeling cheated out of her own dreams and alone. Looking back, she sees how her widowhood experience has shaped who she is both personally and professionally. She recognizes that there can be more than one man of her dreams. She also recognizes that losing her husband at a young age required her to develop skills that she is still using today. It allowed her to form wonderful relationships with other widows and created the space for her to more fully develop her relationship with her Creator. Professionally, it created her desire to learn more about life-changing events and how they affect our decision-making so that she can prepare others for what lies ahead. Her goal is to help other widows transition from grief to growth with confidence and a sense of purpose. Out of all this experience, she founded a nonprofit dedicated to educating and empowering widows called The Widow's Journey. Please join me in welcoming Joy Kirsch.
Well, that's hard when I can't hear the claps, but I can certainly see them. So thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you, Andrea. What a wonderful group that I'm so pleased to have become a part of. So thank you for having me here today. And it's lovely to be able to say I can start with scripture. And I'd like to share with you Ecclesiastes 3. I'm going to share verses 1 through 6 because this is something that really resonates with me lately. And it is, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away. That has resonated with me so much lately in COVID. And I've been thinking a lot about how widowhood and going through a pandemic are so similar, because just like Ecclesiastes says, life is a journey. It's always unfolding, and it's this combination of beautiful scenes, and yet we know we're also going to have potholes and flat tires and wrong turns and times when our GPS doesn't work. And what I've experienced and am continuing to experience during COVID is that often both those things are happening at the same time. We can be going through something tragic and have something wonderful happening in another part of our lives. So it's kind of like, I guess, being on that drive and you're looking out the window and you're watching this beautiful vista and you're all absorbed in it, and boom, you hit a pothole, you get a flat tire. We know that can happen. And so today I'd like to share the story of one of my flat tires on my journey. And because I am a certified financial planner and a certified financial transitionist and a wealth manager, naturally my perspective will include a few things that I've learned about money. I want to share some of the latest behavioral finance and change management findings. And what I believe that you'll find at the end of our time today is that these topics are not just my story. They're also your story, because I think they are the human story. And if life is a journey, then we all need to be traveling with a good emergency resilience kit. And it's not enough just to have the kit. It's like having that spare tire. If we don't know how to change it ourselves when we're traveling alone, then it's not going to be of great help to us. And I have to tell you that I cannot remember a time when I've needed to call on more of my storage of resilient skills than I am today. Living in the midst of this pandemic is really requiring all of us to process new information, adapt, and create what will eventually be, with the focus on eventually, be our new normal. So if we were to graph transition, what would that look like? And I'm going to throw something up on the screen here. And can I just say, you know, we hear so much about how young girls are not getting into the math and the sciences, but I've got to say kudos to all of you ladies for pulling off the whole technology thing today. And hopefully we'll get through this too, because I've got a couple of slides I'd like to share with you. So Sarah, if you're hearing me, I'm showing that I've been disabled. So is there a way for me to share my screen? Sarah, help me. Okay, let me try one more time. Aha. Okay, I'm getting really close here. They made me all look so good. Let's see how this works. Okay, Sheila, was that a thumbs up? You can see that now? Thank you so much. Okay, so if we were to graph what transition would look like, I'd like to suggest to you that this is a model that we could choose. Can I say a model that we could choose? Because I think the last time I was looking at the different science and thought processes in Harvard and the different educational settings about change, there's a lot of different models. But this is the one that we use in my work as a certified financial transitionist. This is the one we believe best describes how money factors in with life-changing events, like for me, as Sarah mentioned, was widowhood. So we break it into 4 stages. And don't get caught up in the whole idea that this might happen linearly, right? This doesn't happen in a straight line. And in fact, sometimes we don't even participate in all the stages. Like anticipation, the first one shown there. Anticipation is a stage that is often skipped, right? We went right into this pandemic without a lot of early warning signs. So often we can go right into ending. And then we'll go from ending through passage and then into what's called the new normal. But what we need to recognize about life-changing events, whether it's widowhood, divorce, any sort of loss, pandemics, is that they are complex and they typically take longer than expected. When I hear people talking about new normal, post-COVID, it really makes me kind of giggle, because in reality, the ending stage can be a very long stage. And in my world, we define that ending stage as the period that you're still basically developing and finding out what's going to happen, right? So for example, if we compare this to a pandemic, the ending stage is the lockdown, the early stages of opening up, waiting for testing, treatments, vaccines, and more confidence that we can avoid infection or reinfection. So it's being cautious of that second wave. So in my work as a financial transitionist, we actually wrote this back in April. So COVID had hit in March. We knew it was going to be a life-changing event. We just didn't know how much it would affect us. So we started thinking about what would the ending stage look like. And at the time, even though it was so hard to think about, we thought it would probably take about a year. And as we think about going into the 10th month of this, we realize that it may take longer than that, right? I mean, we are not anywhere close to thinking about what our new normal is going to look like. We don't even have a vaccine. Hopefully we do soon. And if you were on the Zoom, Sheila was talking about how wonderful it was that we've got a new vaccine announced that they're thinking might even be out to the most vulnerable of us before the end of the year. But we are definitely still in the ending stages because we can't even get to passage until we feel like the crisis is over. So that's what we define as moving from the ending stage to passage. And when you look at this graph of passage, it's really kind of interesting. And you know what this is illustrating, right? How we move forward when we're experiencing grief or life-changing events. And then we'll feel like we're moving backwards. It's that one step forward, two step back. And life feels very chaotic. It's still very fearful. Even though we're now in passage and we feel like the crisis is over, we still have a lot of chaos and fear as we're trying to navigate our way. It's also the time that new possibilities start to appear. So where ending tends to be the time where you don't want to make any major decisions. And you know how that rule of thumb is to wait a year as a widow before you make any major life-changing decisions. My work in this space has suggested that that needs to look more like 3 years, that it will take 3 years before you will feel like you've been through enough of passage. So you've gotten through the ending, you've got into enough of passage that you've started to try on some new suits of clothes. And you're trying to figure out who you are. And so I recommend to widows, if at all possible, to wait 3 years before they make any major life-changing decisions. So in ending and in anticipation, you really want to sit with the discomfort. You want to be okay with the change. And often that means stopping yourself from making decisions that you could regret later on. And in my work with other widows, my main goal is to help them move forward, as Sarah mentioned, with confidence and a sense of purpose. And really, only you can define what the successful new normal looks like for you. But there are ways that you can support yourself along that journey. So in passage, you're starting to move forward, you're starting to try out new things, you're starting to remember who you were before. And then you might have these things that I like to call ambushes, right? Where you, I can still give you a very good example. For me, I was walking down the grocery store aisle, pushing my cart, putting things in my cart, and this had been about 9 months after my husband had passed. And I looked down in my cart, and there was a box of cereal in there that I don't eat. It was my husband's cereal. And so here in the middle of the grocery store, I just started bawling. 9 months later, and I was overwhelmed with the fact that I still obviously had that belief that he was going to walk back in the door and I needed to have his favorite cereal there. That's what I call an ambush. It's when we think we're making progress and then something will pull us back. What we're experiencing with COVID is that for some of our newer widows, and even some who've been beyond the loss of their spouse for a few years, COVID has really brought them back to that dark space. And I'm not saying that they don't have skills and tools now to get themselves out of it, but it is really easy to go back because so much of COVID is like any other sort of loss. We're going through a life-changing event, and it's going to require us to get through it, to get the crisis behind us, to get into passage and discover those new possibilities before we can choose and move on to our new normal with confidence. So I think about some of you who are trying to educate your children at home, or perhaps you're trying to determine if your career is going to sustain you financially and emotionally, or you're trying to determine if your marriage is worth saving, or if adult children can survive on their own. Perhaps you're trying to determine how you can allow your parents to age gracefully through this or die with dignity. So COVID has some of these same experiences that we have in other parts of our loss. And again, one of the challenges of this is that we can be going through these really difficult times and have these beautiful vistas at the same time. We can have a child being born or grandchild being born. And we can have a planned retirement that we're starting to enjoy, or perhaps a child graduating. So all of these good things can happen along with these terrible things called COVID. So our objective is to fall back on the skills that we have and feel like we're listening to God's plan for us. That's what the passage stage is all about. Listening to what God is telling us and determining how we can move forward. And even though there can be good times and bad times happening together, I want to suggest to you that it's in the disruption, it's in the really disrupted phases of our lives that we can fall forward, that we can move into these tremendously creative periods of our lives and create something new that we hadn't even imagined before. So I want to talk to you a little bit about my journey and share with you some of the things that I think will be helpful as you move through yours. So now I'm going to try and stop share, and hopefully I will be back with you soon. So a little bit about my story, just give you a little background. I chose my career in wealth management because you could say I grew up in a family that was long on love but short on money. So I grew up in East Texas on a farm. I am one of 6 children. So my dad was a dairy farmer, and we really did not have a lot of money. So it was just something that was interesting to me. I wanted to understand it. I wanted to understand how families could successfully navigate. My father actually filed for bankruptcy in the 70s as a dairy farmer. And so with 6 kids, it was a little scary time in my family. So I wanted to understand how I could avoid this fear that I was exposed to. And I was 10 when my dad filed for bankruptcy. So I went and got a college degree in economics here locally at the University of Dallas. And then I went on to get my securities and my insurance licenses and discovered that I really wanted to help others with their entire financial picture. So I became a certified financial planner. And it was in that work and in the industry that I eventually met and married my wonderful husband, also right off the farm in Iowa. And we eventually started our own financial services firm. So I will show you that lovely man, hopefully. Let's see. You guys did so much better with the technology than I'm doing. There we go. So there you have the 1993 version of me with my lovely husband, also the farmer, right off the farm of Iowa. And so I thought I was doing everything right. You know, I did everything that I believed I was supposed to. I went to school, I got my degree, I started studying this field. And, you know, there's that expression of man plans, God laughs. Well, I thought I was doing everything according to my plan, apparently, but certainly not according to God's plan. And what made my life particularly interesting was that as a financial planner who had this training, I had already worked with widows, and I had already done some of this work that was required of myself from a technical standpoint. But what I wasn't prepared for when my husband died after only 4 years of marriage was how grief would affect my journey. No one taught me in my studies about how grief affects our brains and our emotions. So yes, at age 30, with 4 years of marriage behind me, not only did my husband pass away suddenly, but he committed suicide. So that comes with a lot of complication and additional grief. But for so many of you on the call, you have experienced loss of your own. And so you know that when we lose someone, it really affects us in every part of our life, right? I literally felt like a different person in my body. I'm normally someone who can make decisions easily, but I became that proverbial deer in headlights. I couldn't concentrate, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't even find my keys. I love the story of one of our widows who was searching almost the entire day for her tennis shoes, only to find them later in the refrigerator. So we totally lose our minds for a little while. And by the way, if her tennis shoes were in the refrigerator, you can only imagine where the milk was, right? It was in the closet. So we do lose our minds. We certainly lose a sense of self. And it doesn't just affect us mentally and emotionally, but really it affects our health, our well-being, our ability to work and communicate, our sense of self, our place in the community and our families. And when you hear all this, again, doesn't it kind of strike you as, oh yeah, that's really how I'm feeling now, going through COVID. My sense of self has changed. Certainly my place in the community, the way we socialize has changed. Our families have changed. So we're all going through these life-changing events that have such a deep effect on us. And if we're not aware of what we're going through, I think we can end up making decisions that we could later regret. So losing Larry was my primary loss. And yet whenever we have a primary loss, we also often have secondary losses. So what I found is that often the loss isn't just the person, it also is the emotional side of us that changes. So that's the part that I was never trained to address, was the personal side of money. So, you know, I like to say that money is just is, you know, I mean, it is what it is. It doesn't have any emotions. But people, on the other hand, we are very emotional beings. And our relationship with money is a very emotional one. But I can tell you that going through this experience, what I now fondly call from my grief to my growth, which is my passage, to my grace, allowed me to find God's calling for me. And I'll go back to saying it is in these worst moments that these creative forces really can come alive. And you can not just become, but can also create things beyond your wildest imagination. So how does this all intersect? Well, I would suggest to you that it starts with change. And everything begins with the change, and you can't separate out the change from the money, because when life changes, money changes, and when money changes, life changes. So again, money, no emotion. It just is what it is. But our feelings around money have a lot to do with emotions. And what, in fact, I've learned is that there are two sides of money, but they are both equally important and equally complex. There's this technical side that I knew so much about before I lost my husband, the financial planning, the cash flow, the estate planning, how to retitle an account or determine who the beneficiary is. But that has nothing to do with the personal side of money. That part of us that feels totally disconnected from our bodies, the part of us who feels totally disconnected from society, who feels cut off from our families and our communities. That is the personal side of money. And quite frankly, it is often the personal side that leads our decisions, that drives the decision-making process. So I think what we can talk about is that if life is a journey, like Ecclesiastes says, if life is a journey, then certainly we're still moving through ours. But what I found about the financial issues is that the technical part of those issues can be very confusing. They can be challenging, they can be boring. So our natural tendency is to either ignore them or to worry about them incessantly. So we're focusing often on the personal instead of the technical. So to make an analogy, if life is a journey, I think that the finances are like packing. You know, I love journeys. I love going new places and discovering new people and food and things, but not so much about the packing. I don't really enjoy the packing part. The worst thing that happens to me if I pack incorrectly for a journey is I have to wear my underwear inside out, right? But if we pack incorrectly for our life journey and we don't address the finances correctly, then that can lead to some pretty severe consequences. Almost 80% of widows say that losing a spouse is the hardest thing that they've ever been through. And almost half of them worry, regardless of their wealth, regardless of their financial sophistication. Almost half of widows worry about becoming a bag lady. And you may find yourself in a similar situation going through COVID. How is this going to affect the family finances? Are you going to end up in a situation that puts you in a vulnerable place? There's a good reason why we feel this way. It's because we're walking down a road that we haven't been through before. Okay, these are uncharted waters. For me, especially at age 30, losing my spouse was not just something I'd never gone through before, but quite frankly, it was nothing that my peer group had ever gone through before. So there weren't a lot of places for me to turn to get a good feeling for what to do next. And as is often the case, probably for you, as it was for me then, probably for you going through COVID, not only can sad things happen with good things happening, but losses rarely happen by themselves. They're always much more complex than that. And that's what we call secondary losses. So often we don't realize when we have a primary loss that there will be all these secondary losses. So with me, losing my spouse was the primary loss, but then I had the secondary loss of income, my feeling for safety. Potentially, I thought I was going to lose my home. I didn't know what was going to happen with my family unit. Our health is a secondary loss that we can experience. We lose our sounding boards. We lose our identity. And one of the things I hear so often from widows is we lose our confidence. For whatever reason, when we have to redefine ourselves outside of this prescribed spousal unit, we lose our confidence. So there are all these secondary losses that happen that we have to pay attention to too. On the other side of the spectrum, there's these secondary gains. So responsibilities that get added to us when we're left alone to deal with these things. So secondary gains can be things like yard work, fixing the car, decision making, picking up the kids. So let's think about COVID. Our secondary gains are homeschooling, perhaps taking care of a parent, not getting to see a parent, not getting to hug the people in our lives. All of these are secondary losses that have come with COVID. So for me, I discovered that I had debt that I wasn't aware of. I had a sports car that I didn't know that I owned. And those are financial issues, but because my husband committed suicide, I also had these secondary losses of, did I do enough? Did I do everything that I should have done in my marriage to help my husband? So what happens when our brain starts dealing with all these changes? I want you to think about whether you're experiencing some of this yourself as we go through COVID. Because what happens in widowhood and other types of loss is this shows up for us in some pretty common struggles, things that we didn't necessarily experience before. So like short attention span, or making decisions out of fear, or we become very narrow focused. A good example of that would be, I had a dear client when she lost her husband. She had a lot of decisions that needed to be made, but her husband had not shared with her what he wanted to be done with his ashes. And so she had this heavy weight on her as to how to dispose of the ashes. So the accountant was calling me and saying, we got to get tax returns filed. And I said, well, where's your sticking point? And he said, I don't know. I keep calling her. And so when I spoke with her and found out that the real issue was that she didn't know what to do with these ashes, we determined that that narrow focus had really taken over. And we needed to address that first in order to address the other issues. So that's an example of narrow focus. Loss of possibilities is something that we see a lot in widowhood, where we just get stuck. Tell me if this is like you for COVID, but we just get stuck and we think, what I'm experiencing today is what I'm going to experience for the rest of my life. It's like time is compressed. And so we can't imagine that we're ever going to get out of this terrible place that we are. And because of that, we have this loss of possibilities. We often have victim behavior. We can get combative or angry. It's very hard to concentrate. We can lose energy. And this is happening because of our loss or because of the stress. And if you think about the female brain under normal circumstances, and you compare that to the male brain, you know that we aren't wired to just take in information and make a good decision, right? I mean, you have this personal experience, I'm sure, where it's not enough for us as females to make good decisions. We want to make perfect decisions, right? I mean, we in general have to process a lot more information. We have to study things more than our male counterparts, because men typically are just interested in gathering facts, processing those facts, and making a good decision. But that's not good enough for us. We have to make perfect decisions because we believe so much rides on the decisions that we make. And often, quite frankly, that's true. A lot does ride on the decisions that we make. So add widowhood to that picture when you're making those decisions alone without your sounding board, and it can really even get more complicated. So what has to happen in order for us to be able to access the part of our brain that we literally lose access to during times of stress? And the scientists can actually study this now, where they literally see the brain flow out of that higher thinking part, that cerebral, that frontal cortex part, into the mammalian part of our brain. So that's that survival part of our brains. So often we're also in fight or flight during this period, especially during the anticipation and the ending phases. So how is it, if the scientists literally can see the blood pooling in the mammalian part of our brain, the survival part of our brain, how is it that we're going to learn new things that we need to learn to survive widowhood? How are we going to learn how to process paperwork and make good decisions and understand our cash flow and figure out where our retirement is going to be funded by and how the taxes are going to be handled? How do we settle the estate? So all of this is expected of us when we're working from a compromised brain, where we don't necessarily have access to the cognitive part of our brain that allows us to learn new things. So that's one of the things I want to address. The other thing I want to address is this desire by us as women to make perfect decisions. Because some questions just don't lend themselves to perfect answers. And I think where we will often see that happen is in a case like this, where you're going through something you've never gone through before. And let's take COVID. If there's no precedent during our lifetime, or if you've never gone through this before in your lifetime, like widowhood or divorce or losing a child, all of this requires us to let go of some of that desire to make the perfect decision. And I want to talk to you about how we can do that. So let's switch gears. And if you will indulge me, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about my personal journey and how I went from grief to growth to grace, how I gave up my fears of becoming a bag lady. And spoiler alert, there is a lot of prayer involved in this process. So I want to share with you, I want to continue with the travel analogy, if you will. And I want to say that if life is a journey, then I think there are three things that I have learned to carry on my journey. The first is a map. The second is a travel team, a really good travel team. And the third is what I call my extra bag. So in this journey of life, I suggest that you have a map, a great travel team, and an extra bag. So what does that mean, a map? A map is simply a financial plan, and I'm sure you can apply this to other things in your life. But for me, everything comes down to having a plan. I want to know where I am today and where I'm trying to get to so that I can define the best path to get from point A to point Z. And I would suggest to you that if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to have as much fun getting there. And for me personally, if I don't have a plan, I don't have as much fun getting there. Now, I like to build fun into my plan. I like to build spontaneity into my plan. I'm not one of those travelers who has to know every single moment where I'm going to stop and where the bathrooms are going to be on the way, although I should probably know more about that since I need to stop quite a bit. But on my travel path, I do want to know where I'm going to sleep at night. And I mean, some people are just more adventurous than I am, but I want to know where I'm going to sleep at night. I want my plan and I want to know what my destination is, but I'm willing to be spontaneous. But when I have a plan, I feel better prepared for being spontaneous, if that makes sense. So in my world, having a plan means helping my clients figure out where they are today and where they're going and how we're going to best use their assets, their ability to make a living, the assets they've accumulated, the assets they need to accumulate to get to where they're going. And I would suggest to you that a good map, a good financial plan isn't just about the assets, but like money, it's both technical and personal. So it has to be about your values. It has to be about what's important to you. I was working on a case study with some colleagues this week, and we were talking about a client who had just planned her own retirement. She was finally free. Her kids were grown. She was going to start traveling. She was going to discover parts of herself that she wasn't able to discover when she was working so hard for all those many years. Then she got the call. She got the call that her mom said, "I've sold my house and I'm moving in with you." Wow. Suddenly, that retirement picture, that map looks a lot different. But what we know about this woman is that her priorities were freedom, flexibility, the ability to discover new things. So how do we reconcile that with our values of our family and what's important to us in other areas of our life? That's where a good plan is going to have to be flexible in order to adjust. And that's where I think having a good team can help you get there. Because a map, like money, just is, right? It is what it is. It's just a thing. It doesn't have emotions. But people, we have values, we have emotions. And that's what we have to learn to apply to our plan when we're building out our map, to make sure that map is in alignment with our values. So that's where I think having a great financial planning team is essential to the journey. So a team will be technically strong, but also have the behavioral coaching skills to help you apply your values. And not only do you want behavioral skills on your financial planning team, but I would suggest to you, you also want someone who specializes in life-changing events, in transition events, who understands those stages of expectation and ending and passage and new you, who can help you develop your map and be prepared for when life changes. Because mom called you and said, I've sold my house and I'm moving in with you. How do you deal with that kind of change? So your behavioral coaching experts can help you do this. But we have to be prepared that even when we're enjoying these lovely vistas, we can hit a pothole. We can lose our spouse. We can have COVID. We can have things happen that we were not at all prepared for and don't know how to react. And that's why the third thing that I want to carry on my life's journey is that extra bag. So what's in that extra bag? Well, obviously, we want to have a change of clothes. We want to have our extra medications, right? When you travel, you always take extra medication in case the journey ends up lasting longer than you expected. But what else is in your extra bag? What else is it that you can pull out of that bag when your GPS isn't working, when you hit that pothole, when you have a fender bender? Those are little things, but sometimes we go through these major things like COVID and the loss of a spouse. That's really the equivalent of kind of driving off the reservation. So what do we want to have in that extra bag besides our medications, besides the copy of our map? That's where we want to make sure that our financial plan has built in some liquid reserves. And I want to go back to when we talked about ending, when we talked about that expectation and then the ending and how long those phases can be and how long the passage can be. And I mentioned then that for widows, I suggest not to make decisions in just the first year, which is what prevailing wisdom is, but to actually wait 3 years. And I would suggest the same to any of you having major life changes because of COVID. We want to have a 3-year window that we can explore through that ending and into passage and make enough good decisions and be able to process information so that we can make decisions that will take us to our new normal. So how can we afford to do that? How can we afford to wait 3 years? Well, if you're still working and you have income coming in that hasn't been affected by COVID, then you should have that plus your little 6 months emergency fund as the rule of thumb. But what I would suggest to you is that ideally, as you put together your own financial plans, you really want to have 3 years worth of liquidity at your disposal. You want to be able to access replacement of income so that if your spouse loses his job, or if you lose your job due to COVID, or if you lose your spouse and his income because you lost your spouse due to his death or a divorce, 3 years is what it's going to take for you to get far enough through this transition. And again, I'm speaking in generalities. We all move at our own pace. But as a good rule of thumb, my suggestion to you is to ignore the wisdom about having a 6-month emergency fund and be prepared for 3 years. Now, you can self-insure for that. If you're blessed enough to have been able to put some assets away, it doesn't mean it needs to sit in your checking account, but it does need to be accessible and not subject to market risk. And if you aren't blessed enough to have started saving and building up your own assets, I'd like to consider that your life insurance should play this part. Your disability insurance can play this part. So make sure that in addition to having money in your life insurance to pay off your house, if that's what you desire, or to make sure and pay for the kids' college education, you want to also just build enough cash in that life insurance policy to give you 3 years worth of living expenses so that you can get through that ending stage and that passage stage. and get to the point where you can literally access the higher thinking part of your brain so that you're not forced to make these decisions before you need to. A lot of people in our industry is very guilty about get your money invested, get your money invested. I'm not saying you should wait 3 years to get your money invested. I am saying you should learn to be comfortable sitting with stress, sitting with the unknown, and being still. So be still and know that I am God. That's, to me, what God is telling us. Listen, take the time out to listen to what God is telling us, to listen for the right way forward before you make big decisions. So insurance is another thing that I want to have in my bag. What other things? Those are the technical pieces. What other things do we need to have in our bag to help us through these difficult times? I think laughter has been extremely important to me. Good friends. For me, a good bottle of red wine doesn't hurt. But we all have our other tools to fall back on. And for me, that includes prayer. It includes meditation. It includes these resilience skills that I've tried to build in all the times that I haven't been under major stress. Things like courage and hope and the ability to see a future. And most importantly, all of that comes because of faith. It is my faith that has truly led me through all of these difficult times. It's allowed me to be a better planner. It's allowed me to handle all the unexpected events in my life that I truly would not have been able to face without it. And I know I'm singing to the choir here, but I'd like to invite you to take just a minute and do a little exercise with me so that you leave here thinking about your own extra bag and what should be in it. And I think the easiest way to do that is to think back to the last crisis. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a crisis like COVID or losing your spouse, but the last true crisis that you had to go through, whether it was changing jobs or helping your kids through a bad marriage, all of those things we've been through before and survived. So I want you to take a second and think about what skills that you fell back on that really helped you get through that time. Those are what you need to pack in your extra bag. And those resilience skills, whether it's prayer or meditation or exercise or getting out in nature, all of those resilience skills we have to build in times of calm so that we can pull them out of our bag in times of stress. Because what I want to suggest to you is that this too shall pass, as we know. And I want to go right back to Ecclesiastes and read you verses 11 through 13. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has put eternity in our hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. I know that nothing is better for them than to rejoice and to do good in their lives. And also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. So with that, I'd like to say thank you and Godspeed on your journey. And thank you to the Zoom group for their wonderful claps.
Hold on, I'm still trying to figure this out here. But while we still have you here, Joy, thank you so very much for your time, you guys. If we can just let Joy know how much we appreciated her sharing those steps with us. And Joy, thank you for circling that back in as we are going through COVID and as we are experiencing different levels of loss, not just of our spouse, but just changes in our life, how that these points that you shared with us truly make sense. So thank you so very much. And we do have a donation to your charity, and she has selected the Widow's Journey, and that's the widowsjourney.org, that will be making a donation to her today. Thank you so much, Joy. And so without further ado, as we begin to close, I'd like to go ahead and let you know what we have to look forward to in December. So what we've done is we've planned 3 specific months to go ahead and celebrate. And Cynthia, if you could join us just for a moment, please, on how we are celebrating 25 years of ministry with FPW. If you can share with us, Susan, what we have to look forward to, and Cynthia and I will wrap that up for you.
Awesome. We are looking forward to next month. I hope every one of you will join us and bring a friend. Cynthia, Megan Ross, and Andrea Hollis. Discuss the current status of FPW, learning from the past while preparing for the future. Cynthia and Andrea will lead through an intimate discussion by moderator Christine Schwab. FPW's past president, Cynthia, and current board president, Andrea, discuss the foundational strength of our organization and how such depth allows the organization to reach new heights.
Thank you so much. I know for me, I know when we did this transition, Cynthia, we were right in the middle of it, right?
Yeah. we were, and we didn't expect this.
No, but we were very insistent that we would be together. And so we do thank you guys for showing up, not just online, but in person. And so please join us next month, and Cynthia and I will present some goodness to you. How about that?
I hope so.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Susan. And as we go ahead and close out, again, thank you so much, Joy, for joining us today. JP is also joining us here. He was with us 2 summers ago, wasn't he? With our financial planning summer series. And so we are so grateful to have you guys here with us today. And as we close out, I'll go ahead and take us to the Lord of prayer. And please be safe this week and take care of yourselves and your families. If you do have any prayer requests, we didn't have the tickets on the table today. Please make sure that you grab one of us, one of our board members, anyone at your table. If you've had an opportunity to pray inside of our virtual visiting there, please let us know. We do take that to the throne, all of your concerns and all of your testimonies and victories. And thank you. Father God, again, we just thank you for this time. I feel so still, and I feel that many of the ladies here and our guests also feel some stillness. We thank you for the message that you were to you used with Joy to give us a different perspective, or add to a perspective as we go through loss, and even in the transitions in our lives, Father God, that you are still in control, and we thank you. And Father God, as we leave here today, we are not far from you. And that for every need that is represented here, their families, friends, that we pray for them in Jesus' name. Father God, we thank you, and until we meet again, we'll see you next week. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Joy. You did a marvelous job, and we hope to see you again sometime. An FPW.
I would love that. Yes.